Director of the think tank Orthodox Conservatives joins us now. It's Joseph Robertson. Joseph, good to see you. Busy times, lots to think about. And from the Orthodox Conservatives' point of view,
yes.
How do you think the Prime Minister has been performing this week?
Well, I think it's been a mixed bag to some degree. I think he's obviously facing broader issues at home with the Partygate scandal and everything like that, while having the bigger issues to deal with abroad, going across to India, and obviously dealing with the circumstances in Ukraine as well.
Does that help him or hinder him? The fact that he's seen on the world stage, the fact that he's seen, to use his words, as getting on with the job?
Yeah, I think it helps. I think from a PR perspective, keeping going is always good. And I think what he's doing right now is important work. So bringing the ties with India, a country steeped in history and a key member of our Commonwealth friends, that's going to take some of the stress off him at home, because it's just such an important mission, I guess.
An interesting mission, not just, I suppose, based on trade, and certainly he's been welcomed with open arms. I gather there's billboards all over Gujarat with his picture, larger than life, more billboards than we've got, Eamon, even. And he's also there on an interesting mission in terms of Ukraine as well, because India not quite in step with the rest of the West in their response to Putin.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting case you've got with India, because obviously we know there's some arms deals going on that they want to see fulfilled from Russia. But as well as that, I think there's also an interesting thing to look at with cryptocurrency. China's been developing its own kind of crypto for a number of years to fill into its plethora of different digital tools that it uses. And I think India's probably moving more towards the Chinese model as far as digital currency goes. So that's something that I think maybe we need to look to draw them back from if we want to bring them back into the Commonwealth fold.
We see you've completely lost me as to what that all means. What difference does it make with what currency India trades with?
So when it comes to digital, if you go with the Chinese model, you're being drawn more into their sphere of influence. And that's something that Russia's sought to do recently, is to ally quite strongly in terms of how they're building their digital financial model.
Yes.
So
bottom line, Joseph, in this very, very important week, there's going to be this vote today whether the Prime Minister should be held to account as to whether he misled Parliament or not. Where do you, or where does Orthodox Conservatives stand as regard support for Boris Johnson?
Well, I think what he did was wrong, but I wouldn't go as far as to condemn him purely based on that. I think for us a key issue is more reconsidering the policy around lockdowns rather than worrying about who broke the rules during that period. We've seen research recently from the Johns Hopkins Institute that suggests that it only affected mortality positively by about 0.2%, the whole sort of lockdown policy, everything that's been going on. So for us, the key thing is to make sure that we're looking at the economic shock rather than worrying perhaps what the Prime Minister was doing at that time. How is he pulling us back when the taxpayer is being hit so hard at the moment? And is he going to rein in the green taxes that are affecting people?
Which you would like to see.
I would love to see that. I think that's one of the key areas we need to look at, how we're being affected.
You see, Joseph, you're absolutely right, and I think there is a big disconnect here, that a lot of the public, particularly with these local elections coming up, see a disconnect. They see a government who had a chance through the spring statement from the Chancellor to show they are in touch with people, that they feel people's pain, and they feel that maybe that opportunity went unheeded and has been missed.
I think so. I think the problem is that by constantly sort of rapping on the door of Partygate, we push the Prime Minister back into a hole and almost make it more of a personal matter rather than getting him to focus on the issues that are affecting us as taxpayers.
And I suppose the problem with this Partygate story is, unfortunately, the police investigation hasn't wrapped up yet, and we haven't had the full Sue Gray inquiry, which means it just goes on and on and on. We're all sick to death of talking about it. This motion that's been tabled by the Conservatives is to try and delay this vote on whether or not Boris Johnson should face this inquiry. Labour, of course, saying, well, this is just a delay tactic, they're trying to block it. But it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Because why not wait until all of this is wrapped up before we talk about it some more? We don't know what's happening next week, let alone the week after.
Well, I think one thing we do know that's coming up is of course, local elections. And I think from all party perspectives, it's best to focus on that get that out of the way and then move on to the future of the PM.
Certainly the Conservatives would argue that.
Certainly the Conservatives would argue that, but I think other parties have their own campaigns in full flow. Why sort of sideline that, push the focus back onto the PM? If he does a good job, that might sideline their efforts as well.
Can you see a no-confidence vote coming?
Not immediately, no. And again, I think it's because we've got too many issues crammed into one. I think it was interesting that Craig Whitaker, who has been quite outspoken in sort of asking the PM to step down, didn't actually submit a letter into the 1922 Commission. And I think that's broadly kind of the feeling within Tory MPs. It's like, yes, the Prime Minister did wrong, and we'll say that publicly, but we don't want to shift the party too far.
Yet. So could I ask you, you don't have to answer me, but where would you stand on this? You say you don't want to push the party too far yet. Should the Prime Minister eventually be pushed?
Well, for me, I want to see a gold standard Conservative back in number 10, somebody who really cares about what the membership wants, somebody who's not detached from the real issues we're looking at. So, of course, I think PM has a lot of work to do there.
Who springs to mind when you describe
Who springs to mind? Sir John Redwood, Suella Braverman, someone like that who's really got the confidence of the membership and also has a lot of vision for the future rather than keeping on with the same kind of Cameron-esque policy that's been to the left of Blair largely for most of this premiership.
So when you talk about what the membership wants, and you say they don't want that Cameron model there, what do they want? What is important to your Orthodox Conservatives?
Well, I think someone who focuses on the traditional values of the Conservative Party, which is looking at how families are affected, creating new jobs, looking at not overtaxing, trying to reduce spending rather than this enormous push we've seen, even post-COVID, continuous borrowing. We need to cut down on taxes. We need to see...
Are you aware, Joseph, of retrospective taxes?
Absolutely,
introduced by George Osborne. Do you have a view on retrospective taxes?
I think that what we need... Well, we're in a crisis at the moment, so the problem is that we need to find a way out by creating more jobs and more economy rather than looking at taxes. So I think for me it's about reviving the economy rather than stifling the taxpayer further. So I would say to steer completely clear as much as possible of continuing to tax.
Penalising people.
Penalising people is something they're not involved in.
Does fracking come into that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we need to be looking, especially with the crisis ongoing in Russia, you know, where's our oil going to be coming from?
And Rwanda, where does the Orthodox wing of the party stand on?
So I think it is a step in the right direction. So I think we do need to do something to curtail the flow of migrants across the Channel, and there needs to be a humanitarian response to that as well.
So was the Archbishop of Canterbury wrong?
Totally wrong, because he's not considering his own people here at home. And I think that's always the dual aspects of a humanitarian crisis. There's a reason why we also need to stop having loads of people coming into the country. It's not because we're racist, it's not because we're not welcoming, it's because we have to put our own people first. And I think the Rwanda policy is a step in the right direction, but it certainly needs a lot of work.
Very interesting talking to you, Joseph Robertson. Come back and speak to us again. Very nice to hear how the Conservative voters are thinking on this. Joseph is the Director of Orthodox Conservatives. Lovely to talk to you.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks for your time. Thank you.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.